The Somali Civil War, which began in 1991, was a complex and devastating conflict that ripped apart the East African nation of Somalia. The war was characterized by political instability, widespread violence, and humanitarian crises, with its impact felt for decades. The roots of the Somali Civil War can be traced back to the country's history of political instability and rivalries between various clans. Somalia, a nation located in the Horn of Africa, has been characterized by a decentralized political system, with power often concentrated in the hands of local clan leaders. This system of governance has been fraught with tensions, as different clans vie for power and resources. The instability was further exacerbated by the country's colonization by Italy and later Britain, which left a legacy of political factions and divisions. In 1960, Somalia gained independence from colonial rule, with the Somali National Union (SNU) assuming power under the leadership of Aden Abdul Osman. However, the SNU's rule was marked by corruption and authoritarianism, leading to widespread dissatisfaction among the population. In 1969, a group of military officers, led by Major General Mohammed Syed Barre, staged a coup and established the Somali Democratic Republic (SDR). Barre's regime was marked by a centralized government, with Barre consolidating power by marginalizing rival factions and suppressing dissent. The Syed Barre regime's rule was characterized by widespread human rights abuses, economic mismanagement, and regional tensions. The country's northwest region, Somaliland, sought autonomy, and the eastern region of Somaliland experienced a separatist movement. The regime's repressive tactics led to increased discontent and ultimately contributed to the outbreak of the Somali Civil War in 1991. The conflict was marked by a power struggle between various factions, with the main players being the government forces led by Syed Barre and the opposition groups, which included the United Somali Congress (USC), led by Mohammed Farah Aidid, and the Somali National Movement (SNM), which focused on the northern region of Somaliland. The war was further complicated by the involvement of regional and international actors, such as Ethiopia, Eritrea, and the United States, who influenced the conflict in various ways. The Somali Civil War was marked by intense violence, with numerous atrocities committed by all parties involved. Battlefield tactics were brutal, with the use of civilians as human shields and indiscriminate attacks on civilian populations. The conflict also led to widespread displacement, with millions of Somalis becoming refugees within the country or fleeing to neighboring nations. One of the most significant consequences of the Somali Civil War was the emergence of various armed factions, known as warlords, who controlled different parts of the country. These warlords often engaged in power struggles and fought for resources, further destabilizing the nation. The most notorious of these warlords was Mohammed Farah Aidid, who was responsible for the kidnapping and murder of 24 Pakistani peacekeepers in 1993. The humanitarian consequences of the Somali Civil War were catastrophic, with an estimated 1 million Somalis dying as a direct result of the conflict. Famine, disease, and violence all contributed to the high death toll, with the United Nations estimating that 600,000 to 1 million people died of starvation between 1992 and 1994. The situation was so dire that the United Nations launched Operation Restore Hope in 1992, an intervention led by the United States to deliver humanitarian aid and protect civilians. Despite the efforts of the international community, the Somali Civil War raged on for years, with no clear resolution in sight. It was not until 2006 that the conflict began to take a new direction, with the Islamic Courts Union (ICU) gaining control of Mogadishu, the country's capital. The ICU, a radical Islamic group, was able to bring a semblance of stability to the country, but their rule was short-lived, as Ethiopian forces intervened in 2006, expelling the ICU from power. Over the years, various peace agreements and reconciliation efforts have been attempted, with limited success. Despite the progress made in some areas, such as the establishment of a constitution and elections, Somalia continues to grapple with political instability and the legacy of the civil war. The impact of the conflict can still be felt today, with lingering tensions between clans, ongoing humanitarian crises, and the threat of extremist violence. The Somali government has since made progress, including transition to a federal system of government, increased international recognition and aid, growth of the economy, with GDP growth rate of 2.3% in 2020, efforts to combat piracy and terrorism, improve security, with the Somali National Security Forces, SNSF, and AMISOM's withdrawal in 2021. However, challenges persist. Political instability, with ongoing tensions between the government and regional states, corruption and lack of transparency, poverty and unemployment, with 60% of the population living below the poverty line, human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detentions, ongoing humanitarian crisis, with 2.6 million people in need of assistance,